Aloha, everyone. If we get everybody to take their seats, we're going to get started here. My name's John Hart, and I'll be your moderator for this session. If y'all went out and made some phone calls, try to silence your phones if you could, please. This session is titled Updates to Appendix F and G, Hydrotesting and Dewatering Discharges of State Waters. Again, as we said earlier, this is being streamed on our virtual conference platform. At the end of the presentation, both Jamie and Randy will be available for questions. If you, again, as we said earlier, if you don't feel like asking a question in public, grab them. They'll be around for a little bit afterwards and they'll be able to speak to you one-on-one. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the speakers, Jamie Tanimono and Randee Tubal. Jamie is with the Environmental Health Specialist with the DOH, Clean Water Branch. She assesses compliance with NPDES permits in a variety of facilities, from wastewater treatment plants to construction sites. As a self-proclaimed stormwater geek, her favorite part of enforcing NPDES permit compliance is learning how different organizations and industries protect Hawaii's waters and being a part of perpetuating those good practices. Thanks for doing that. Randee Tubal is an environmental health specialist with DOH, Clean Water Branch. She graduated from Hilo with a degree in tropical conservation biology and environmental science, and is passionate about all things water. She loves her job because every day brings a new adventure, and there are always opportunities to engage with new places and people. Thanks for doing that, Jamie. So please help me welcome Jamie and Randee. Jamie's going to do this first session, and then, or Randee will be doing this first session. I beg your pardon. Yeah.
Aloha kako. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Randee, and I am with the enforcement section at the Clean Water Branch. I have been with the enforcement section probably about 4 years. So I'm kind of the newbie to this section, but I get to come out and talk to people, and it's fun. So yeah, so today I'm going to talk about our general permit for Appendices F and G just got renewed. So we're just gonna kind of chat about that a little bit. And go. Okay, there. All right, so the objectives of the talk. So what is general permit coverage? I'm sure a lot of you probably already know, but we're just gonna touch on it a little bit. And then we're gonna briefly touch on hydrotesting and construction dewatering. So I have to be completely honest with you guys. This was the first time I had really delved through this permit. And so it was all new to me. And so the huge challenge for me to be able to talk to you guys about this was like, what is the relevance? Like, and of course, like, you know, because I'm a procrastinator, I had to have the stress to like finish the presentation on time. And so I was like, I don't care. Like, and Jamie was sitting right next to me and she had her headphones on. And anyway, but what is the relevance? Like, why do we care about hydrotesting? Why do we care about construction dewatering other than it's a requirement, right? So what is it? What are the requirements for the notice of intent that you'll file to get the coverage? What are the effluent limitations? What do they look like in this new permit? What's the current status of each of these permits? And what are the changes from the last permit for those of you that have been around that had to experience the previous permits? And then we'll just end with some final thoughts and questions. So if at any time you guys have questions, you know, you guys can interrupt me or whatever for clarification. Okay, so NPDES general permit coverage, what is it? So a general permit is a permit that's issued to lots of people because you guys are doing the same type of activity. So there's one permit that covers many permittees. It is discharge and activity specific, and it's really a one size fits all condition. So you submit your NOI, like all permits, it's 5-year coverage. And then we issue you the notice of general permit coverage. And then the clincher with this is that you can't really modify it like you would be able to for an individual permit. And while it may seem like the general permits are maybe more difficult to enforce, they're actually a little bit easier because they're so prescriptive, and so many things are required up front that it's protective in that way. Okay, so appendices F and G were renewed this year in January 15th to January, and it's good until January 14th, 2027. Did anybody in this audience have previously existing coverage for either F or G? Anybody? Oh, Jamie did. Oh, you did. Oh, she did in her past life. She just came back to us. Woo! But she did. So if you had previous coverage and you did not file a new notice of intent by March 16th. Oh, you did? You had previous, did you file a new NOI? Okay, yay! By March 16th. Okay, so you had until March 16th to file a new NOI. If you didn't, then you're no longer covered. So if anybody in here is doing F and G and you did not file a new NOI, come in. Okay, so you guys had I think emails went out too, but who knows? Anyway, you guys are all warned now and aware.
What happened if you didn't file?
If you didn't file for continued coverage, then your permit, you're not covered right now. And then you just.
I'm just posing a hypothetical right
yeah,
now.
so yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't be covered right now. We're good with hypotheticals, yeah.
I do not.
I'm sorry, who do you work for? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, if you did not file by the deadline, March 16th deadline, then you would not be covered right now. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, that's a good segue into my, did you need permit coverage? Like, if you guys need permit coverage, there's really good directions on our Clean Water Branch website for how to apply. Yeah. So just go on the website at that blue link and you can go through the e-permit. But if you have questions about how to apply, don't call us. Don't call enforcement. Call the permitting section because that's more their kuleana. Okay, so hydrotesting waters, Appendix F. What the heck is it? I just learned a lot for this talk. I didn't even know what it was, like why you do it, just in full disclosure. So what is it? It's the water that you use to test the integrity of tanks or pipelines, the water used to flush a tank or a pipeline, and the effluent that's used to disinfect a tank or a pipeline. So the discharges by nature would be intermittent. So when you're installing or repairing new lines or new tanks, why is this relevant? Was a big question in my head. Why do we care? I had to ask the engineer guy in our section, like, when do we do this? And he's like, oh, because you want, oh, I should ask you guys, when do we do this? Like, why? Yeah. What was that? Red Hill. Yeah, that's what popped into my head too. What happens when we don't know the integrity of like catastrophic failure? Like bad stuff can happen. So this is why it's important. Why does it have to be regulated? Well, because sometimes there's large volumes of discharge involved, even if it's just water, or if it's cleaning water, or if it's water with chemicals in it. So yeah, thank you, Red Hill. That's what I was thinking. I didn't want to say it outright, but he said it, so it's good. All right. So what are some of the potential pollutants when you're hydrotesting? Could be toxics, sediment, because when you're letting that much water flow, what's going to happen to all the water? Where is it going? Oil and grease, if it's expected to be maybe in your tanks or in your lines, and chlorine, since you're disinfecting. So the new permit is really geared toward looking at those pollutants. Okay, So for hydrotesting, a lot of this stuff is asked for upfront in the NOI requirements. Super helpful because before you start your project, you got to have all your ducks in a line. So it asks for a project description, an analysis of your hydrotesting water, what's in the water that you're going to be using, and what does it look like? What potential pollutants are in there? It asks for a BMP plan up front, hydrotesting BMP plan, and then because you're required to sample for your transmission line, you have to calculate the quantity. And then the basic water quality criteria have to be met, and then you have to inspect the receiving state waters. So when do you need this permit? When you're going to discharge to state waters. All right, so effluent limitations for this permit. I just took a screenshot of what is in Appendix F. So we have, you need to know the quantity, you need to know TSS, there's a limit for TSS, there's pH parameters, and then total residual chlorine. Now, Jamie can maybe chime in on this, but from what I understand, the previous permit, it was difficult to comply with the chlorine because of the time constraints associated with like taking it to the lab or whatever. So that's right. That's the big difference in this permit, is it allows for test kits. I was a lab geek before, so yeah, test kits, that's awesome. That means you can take your kit on site. You don't have to like freak out and rush and get your stuff to the lab in the whatever hold time it is, but you can just test it there. As long as your test kits are compliant with 40 CFR Part 136. And their detection limit is at 20 micrograms or lower. So that's a huge, for field people that go out and do that kind of stuff, that's a huge relief. Okay, and then the other parts of the permit, you have corrective actions, the reporting requirements, and submittal requirements. And of course, you have to also comply with Appendix A, like all permits. Everybody forgets that. Not only do you have to comply with F, but you have to comply with A. And those are the standard conditions. All right, so what's the current status for Appendix F? For those of you that did or did not renew, I don't know what your status is, but we currently have 38 permits that I was able to see for general permits. And Board of Water Supply is probably has the most of those permits. And also we see these types of permits, hydrotesting waters for larger developments that have a lot of water infrastructure. And then I believe it was Cody in our permitting section, he comes up with these frequently asked questions, which is super helpful. And if you guys think you may need an Appendix F permit, I would suggest you go there first. Yeah, and that is what I have for F. Does anybody have questions about F? Because I'm gonna move on to G. No? Okay. Okay. Have you guys had to apply for F out there? And comply with F? No? Anybody? No? All right. I'm just curious because I don't know that we've ever actually done inspections for F. So, yay! Okay, 2 people.
Randee, the question is, for any type of discharge water from a hydrotesting, if it doesn't go into a water body, do we still need the permit?
If you are discharging into something like a sediment basin that's percolating and it's not going to state waters, then I would confirm with the permitting section, but I think you could make the argument that if you're not discharging to state waters, you wouldn't need the permit.
Right.
That's pretty much what I was looking for.
Yeah. But don't take my word for it. Go to the permitting section and ask them, right?
And I understand that all the other concerns or requirements for like your reference to Appendix A along with F, and if it goes to Appendix G, we have to comply with all those things. Okay, so I understand all that. I just wanted to know if it doesn't go into the state navigable waters, you know, do we really need an Appendix F?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say probably
Confirm with-
not, but
Yeah, we have to confirm with the permit section.
I would definitely confirm with them. Yeah, with the permit section.
Okay,
Are there
cool.
any downsides to
Thank you.
that? Like if you think that your sediment basin's gonna work or your detention basin is gonna work and then it's it's never gonna overflow, because that's the hook, right? If you think you're not gonna discharge to state waters, but then you do, the potential enforcement action just escalates from there, versus if you have your permit and you're playing it safe, you're paying $500, right? And you're playing it safe, you're getting your plan and everything, and then a discharge happens, then we can say, oh, okay, well, you know, at least they tried, right? Like they tried to follow the rules versus they didn't. And now they discharge. So, yep, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. Anything else? Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to G. Appendix G, construction activity dewatering. Okay. Is this more applicable for this crowd? What do you guys think? Yeah. All right. I see thumbs up. Awesome. All right. So what is it? This covers the discharges from dewatering process of construction activities of any size, including treated stormwater upon compliance of the applicable general permit requirements. That means you're complying with C, and then you still have stormwater discharges. Anyways, side note, does anyone in here have PTSD from the previous permit? Raise your hand. Super high. Okay, we have one. Okay, apparently, when I was going through my rant of why do we care, oh my God, Jamie was like, actually, I'm really excited about this because the previous permit was super hard to comply with. And I was like, oh, really? And then I started getting more interested. And yeah, so that's really cool. So that shows that, anyway, permits can evolve, people. All right, so when does it apply? So construction activities that require the removal or displacement of water that's going to be discharged into state waters. That was my paraphrasing. I'm like, when do we use this thing? Okay, so if you're digging a hole and there's groundwater because the water table's high and you need to discharge that water into state waters, that's when you need to get a permit. So some examples are you're replacing or repairing a bridge and you have to dig the footing piling things and you're hitting groundwater. Or if you're digging a tunnel, you would be hitting groundwater. Yeah, separate from, and then, you know, Gavin in our section, he likes to, but what about this? But what about, when is it a water transfer? And blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know, Gavin, like, you know, but I think basically if you're doing groundwater to like a surface water, that's when this would be most applicable. But again, permitting section. Okay, so what are the NOI requirements, the notice of intent requirements for Appendix G? You have to have a site characterization report. So you have to know the history of the site. So what are you expected to see when you hit that groundwater? Like, you know, was it industrial before or whatever? You need a project description, disturbance area, it includes the disturbance area portion of the project that needs construction dewatering. You have to submit an analysis of the source water quality, and you have to have a site-specific dewatering plan, which would include things like pumping devices, what is the capacity of your pumps, what's the treatment design, and what are some mitigative measures. You also need a construction pollution prevention plan, which includes the practices you're using to control project site runoff, spillage or leaks, sludge or waste disposal, drainage from raw material. So the construction dewatering is oftentimes, obviously, goes hand in hand with Appendix C. but the Appendix C only handles the stormwater from your construction site. This is the water that's on your site that you need to get out of the way so you can do your work. And the dewatering, you also have to have a dewatering system maintenance plan. So this includes an operations plan, like what are you going to do with your water? How are you going to maintain your system? It's like a BMP plan for how you're going to dewater your site. And that includes monitoring and visual inspections and an effluent control plan. So again, a lot of stuff is asked for upfront, which is good because it forces you to think about it and say, this is what we're going to do. And then we have a record of that. We have a copy of that. And then when we go on inspection, we say, this is what they said they're going to do. Is this what they're doing? Okay, so the permit requirements for this one, you have to treat your dewatering discharges, right? You can do that with sediment basins or trapped stocks dewatering tanks, tube settlers. You can do downstream erosion controls because if, again, you don't want to erode the stream banks or whatever. So you can use vegetated buffers or check dams or riprap. You don't want any visible plumes. You get a lot of calls because there's plumes, sometimes from construction activity, a lot of times from construction activity. No floating solids or foam. And if your water contains oil or grease, you want to use oil water separators. And to the extent possible, use upland vegetated areas to infiltrate before it actually discharges to state waters. And you want to, again, dissipate velocity to minimize the erosion risk using like check dams or other devices. Okay, so I know I had a lot of words so far. This is like one of the first pictures I could find, and it's actually Jamie's picture. This is an example of unsuccessful dewatering. So they made, I don't know who that is in the picture, but they built this awesome wall to dry out this area so that they could work on the bridge, it looks like. And they had they were dewatering. You can see the tube, it's kind of hard to see, but tube coming out and it goes across. This is in Manoa, by the way. Did you guys know that? Manoa Park. No? Goes across into the vegetation, which is good. They're trying to, infiltrate that water, but then it's Manoa, so I don't know how much infiltration is actually possible. And then it comes right back in, the water does, and it comes in back in downstream. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the muddy water at the bottom. So they get in, they tried, but it was unsuccessful. So if you're out on the site, you see something like this happening, like figure out something else, because this clearly is not working. And that's okay. That's why you have to have your plans on site. Because if you try it, you say you're going to do it, you try it and it doesn't work, hey, you can change it. That's the beauty of all of it. Just make sure you sign and date when you did change it, because we'll check that. Okay. And then because the previous Appendix G apparently was so hard to comply with, we really encouraged, and we still do, it's easier to comply with now, but we encourage alternative, like creative solutions for not discharging to state waters. Okay, so it's groundwater. Can you put the water back where it came from, or other types of water? Use it for irrigation. Try to infiltrate the water. Use it for dust control. Injection well. I'm not a huge fan of injection wells personally, but it's an option. Or you apply it to vegetation. If at all possible, you don't want to discharge to state waters if you can help it. So yeah, think creatively. Okay, so these are the effluent limitations and the monitoring requirements now. And all it is you have to know the quantity, you have a TSS limit, oil and grease limit, and pH. Is that what it looked like before? Was there a lot more stuff before? Apparently this is shrunk immensely, which is great for you guys. It's more specific to the actual pollutants. I guess, so Jamie was explaining to me that when you're dewatering, sometimes if it's groundwater, you have a lot of nutrients in there. And so people were saying, there's no way we can comply. We're taking the groundwater out, it's high in nitrogen, and we're putting it into state waters. Like, before we even get the permit, we're coming to the enforcement section because we just can't comply. You know, and it's like, well, what are you supposed to do, right? So this is a good example of like permits do evolve. I know a lot of times, and you guys are, you know, you work for another state agency, and the public especially thinks that we just don't listen and we're not taking in feedback from the public or consultants, but we actually do listen. And there are people that I guess try to make it so that everybody's needs are met. So yeah, so this is a big change. Ta-da! I should have put stars on it. It would have been better. It's just black and white, but that's the big change. Okay. And then the current status, we have a whopping 9 permits. General permits. There's some that are individual, and a lot of it is for counties, issued to counties or state for like things like bridge replacement. Okay, and then my final thoughts on this are the general permits are evolving. We do get feedback from you guys and the public as well, and consultants. And so with hydrotesting, we saw what can happen when lines and tanks do fail. And with dewatering permits, I feel like it's gonna be a thing, like more prevalent in the future because of climate change. Our rising water tables, our areas to build are getting smaller and smaller, you know, areas to develop are getting smaller, and sea level rise and all of that. So yeah, so good thing it's a bit easier. Okay, I think that's my last slide. Oh, this is my last slide. Yeah. Yeah, so this is, I'll take your little tiny seeds of wisdom and let it disperse. No, but for real, I'm not kidding. Yeah, do I have any questions? If not, Jamie's gonna take over. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Randy. Do we have any questions online for people attending virtually? No questions right now?
Yeah. Well, if you guys are shy, we'll be like, you know, cruising around after. You want to talk about it?
We are going to break because we want to stay on the schedule. So Jamie, you're going to be up at 10:15. So you guys have a bit of time to go out and relax and check things out. Thanks again. Mahalo.